I have been chasing my dream of building a dedicated track drift car. And because I took it a step further with doing a complete rebody, there's a lot of extra steps. My drift carbon Ghia began as a Porsche 944 track car that we ripped the body off of and then chopped up a rusty carbon Ghia to use the outer body skin and drape it over top of the 944. Now we've been working on building a wide body kit for it. We made bash bars, we've relocated the cooling system to the rear of the car in drift car fashion, and we've also been prepping this 07K engine to be the engine swap for the car. This is a 2.5 liter inline 5 Volkswagen engine that is known to take a good bit of power and is also within our budget. Drift culture is not only just about driving fast or driving sideways or being loud, it's also about like standing out with your individuality and having a lot of fun doing that. Being a carbon Ghia in itself is already a pretty rare thing for a drift car, but there's other style points on top of that. One of them being that I'd like my turbo to be front and center in the engine bay, not just buried behind the exhaust manifold. That's why I'm building my own turbo manifold. If I bought one off the shelf, it would put the turbo down behind the engine and around the side corner where you just can't see it, and that's not cool. I want it up in front and center. So in a previous video, I made this mock-up turbo manifold with plastic that I 3D printed and snapped together. We also modified this flange that I cut out in our water jet to adapt to it. So we're ready to actually make the turbo manifold from scratch now. Because we're balling on a budget over here, we bought these Weld It Speedway kits for 350 small block engines and other kits to combine and cut up to make our exhaust manifold. Now, I will warn you, so you're aware up front now, we are not using stainless, we're using mild steel to save cost. We'll coat the header when we're done. Big deal, we don't need to have fancy rainbow snakes. They're just gonna be solid, functional snakes. But hopefully we have enough here in this box to cut up and modify to make our turbo manifold. All that being said, let's dig in. All of our plastic bits here are a little bit sensitive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run tape along them so I can kind of take them off in chunks without them all wiggling around. All these bends are just a very rough guide to go off of. I say rough because, well, they're a little overly complex. I'm gonna simplify them as I cut them out of metal. Get them locked in. It's not sticking. Hey, that actually worked pretty well. I'm also marking the direction of exhaust flow so I don't get it mixed up. Nice and solid. Here are the tubes that we need to make. Monster can for scale. So we got 5 runners to do that all come into one single collector. You'll notice the collector is a bit larger in diameter, the holes are, than the tubing that we're gonna be using. So I picked up a tubing expander for that, and we'll do that later in the video, because first we gotta make these runners. This is the first header or manifold that I've ever made, so I don't really know which order would be the best order to make these runners in, but I do know is if I make them individually, I can snap them in afterwards and then weld them into place. So I think I'm gonna start with one of the easier ones that's also kind of buried behind everything, and that's cylinder number 4 right here. This guy just kind of starts here, curls down, curls back, runs to the back side of the collector. Doesn't look too complex. So I'm gonna start here. I mean, what can go wrong? Check this out. These two are so similar to each other. I think I would just cut this short and then cut and rotate that over a little bit and then add another squiggle to it. That's one runner right there. Weld It kit for the win, hopefully. We'll see in like 30 seconds of your time and 30 minutes of mine. Now for a brief break with our sponsor, Carly. Carly's app and scanner can provide manufacturer-level diagnostics, coding, and customization. All you need to do is take this little unit, pop it into the OBD2 port of your car, and then open the app on your phone, and you're in, baby. Here I am with my friend's 2011 BMW 3 Series, and as you would expect from an OBD2 scanner, sure, I can get into the modules and see the diagnostic issues with the car. Plenty of faults going on. You got some O2 sensor issues, a blow-off valve issue, and a bunch of other faults. But it's not just about diagnostics. So once we go into coding here, you can see that there are so many features that you can do to this car. Things I didn't even consider as an option, like changing how bright the daytime running lights are for each individual bulb in the car. That's pretty wild. Check the link in the video description down below to get your own Carly scanner and use code CRUCIBLE to get 15% off your very own scanner. Huge thanks to Carly for sponsoring this week's video. Sponsorships like this keep our channel going. So without any further ado, let's get back to work. I'm gonna throw a tack here and a tack here to hold this together, and then we're gonna have to cut the end shorter because you can see, well, it's still dark in there, but you can kind of see the stub's way too long, and then we have to expand that, and hopefully it works out, and then we can go to the next one. It's so exciting to see this go from plastic to metal. So I had ran down the street to buy this exhaust tubing expander, and it's advertised to work down to 1.5" tubing. However, this is 1.5" tubing, which is what we're working with, and well, as you can see, it doesn't go inside of it. So that's kind of cool. So I ordered another expander. It'll be here tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm gonna keep moving forward and keep making these runners, and we'll go back and try to expand the ends later, because I'm not gonna wait up for this. Worst case scenario, if we cannot get an expander, I might just end up slicing them and expanding them a little bit and then welding it. I don't know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I will say, we are certainly off to a good start already. So that's number 4 done. I'm gonna set this over here so I don't get it confused with the other ones. I wonder which one I should do next. I think I'll do 3 next because 3 is against 4 and goes a little bit like that. Then 2 goes around on top of 3. 1 is behind all of it, and then 5 is along the front. So yeah, we're gonna do 3 next to keep this train rolling. Cut it about there and squiggle that way. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I expected this to take a lot more time. We already got 2 runners done. That means we're almost halfway there with the mock-up. Like, I thought this piece would be a lot more complex to make. I love it when stuff works out like that. To the next one. All right, time for cylinder 2. This one's gonna be a little bit more complex. It's gotta stay underneath the upper exhaust here. It's gonna be going across. Also, I need to make sure that cylinder 1 has enough room to snake around between and go down through here, which, once I push everything out, it kind of has space. Yeah, that sounds like a problem for future me. Well, hopefully that all works out. There's a fair bit of wiggle room in all these parts, which is the benefit of having such a big collector right here until I expand the piping, so we'll be fine. This has got a whoop. Oh yeah, that's gonna work perfectly. 'Cause oh, that's amazing. That should be good enough. Three down, two to go. I think next I want to do cylinder one, which is supposed to go through here, down between these tubes, underneath here, curl around and go into here. And honestly, I am a little nervous about it actually fitting. So let's take all this off, put the plastic on, and see if it actually will work. Because I may have gotten cylinder 4 a little close to the side of the engine block, but it flows better that way, so I might have to reroute one if this doesn't work. There's no way. Wait, hang on. Hang on. It might work. It's a super tight fit, especially right there. Now this plastic diameter is larger. It's 1 5/8 and the tubing's 1.5 inch. So it is a little bit girthier. We might be able to make this work. I'm just gonna have to trust the plastic and hope that when I make this piece and snake it through here, it'll be okay. Your boy's gonna try it. He's gonna try it. Let's break this down to basic shapes. So I have a regular hook on the bottom here, but on the top, it's a tighter radius, a straight, and a tighter radius, and a twist forward. So I need like 3 different bends here, I think. A straight piece, and then 1 flat bend here, thankfully. So let's work on getting the top fed down through, and then we'll get this hook on the end. I needed a little stub on here, so what I did was I welded in a longer stub, and then I'll cut it down nice and short right there. Makes it easier to cut, because how else am I gonna cut that and fiddle it up and weld it? All right, now we just gotta do the bottom hook. We got the upper part here curling down, fits down through. So now we gotta cut this a little bit shorter and hook it up into this part of the collector right here. Boop, boop. Oh yeah. Look at that, baby. Woo! One more left to do. It's number 5. It's the easiest one. It goes from here, around the outside, right to here. Easy peasy. Come on. There we go. So you may have noticed that all this tubing is kind of crunched to the side. because I could have gotten like maybe better flow if I let it flow outwards more instead of cutting over so tightly. The reason for that is when the engine's installed, there's only so much room along the side here. So what I'm doing is kind of crunching it in to make sure that we have space along this corridor here along the side between the engine and the strut tower. And basically, as long as I stayed within the side of the turbo here and didn't go out past it too far, it was like a safe mark, and I'd say it worked out pretty good. And then the idea is to do a V-band here, have the exhaust come up across here, curl down on the backside where there's space here, down, and then, you know, underneath the center tunnel of the car to mate up to the 944 exhaust right here. That's pretty sizable, and it should work pretty well. So now that the layout is done, the pieces are tacked together, I'm gonna pull off each individual runner. We're gonna weld them on the bench, then pop them back in and make sure they still fit. And then after that, we're gonna have to go through and expand the ends to fit in the collector, and then we can weld it all together and be done. I think this whole back half here is gonna be a lot more work than the front half was. Also unrelated, I finally got an oil restrictor on the turbo of the Corolla. Now it like barely smokes at all. It holds boost great. This thing is like pretty much wrapped up for drivability and safety. I love this car. I've been daily driving it all week and had 0 issues on the road, so 10 on 10 car. I'm actually kind of glad we did a little side quest to build the Corolla because it helped me learn how to turbo a car correctly, or, you know, make it work. And the Corolla was, you know, a haggard budget, do it as fast as possible, do it as cheaply as possible project, whereas the Ghia, not so much. Sure, it's on a budget, but we're trying to make it nice. And now I understand even more how fabricating a turbo kit works. I've never done it before. So the second kit I ever make is going to be the Drift Ghia, which I feel better about now that we did the turbo Corolla. The Corolla also makes a great workbench. So in preparation for this header, I bought a back purge setup. Now, we're not doing stainless steel, so it's not super hyper important, because back purging, what it does, it puts argon inside the tube as well, so the gas is shielding the weld both sides. When you back purge, it gets rid of that like crystallizing that's happening to the backside too, which helps with flow. So what I'm gonna do is I have to hook up the system to a bottle of argon, and then you pop these caps in and see there's even like a gas diffuser on the inside. Then you put a couple PSI of argon through the tubing, and that will not only help the backsides of the welds to be smooth, but I've also heard it helps you weld because it pushes the weld, like the weld puddle up at you to keep it nice and level. I've never back purged before, so this is gonna be a fun experiment. So I was annoyed. I have an extra argon bottle that's like back here on a welding cart in the corner, and I was like, dang it, I gotta like dig it out of here. I don't really wanna do that right now. Well, it turns out that the hose that came with this back purge setup is super freaking long, and it makes it the entire way to the welding table. So I don't even have to, I can just leave it back there in the corner. This week is working out great so far, and I'm sure me saying that won't come back to bite me in the ass. I mean, look at that. That's beautiful. Alright, I'm super stoked on the progress so far. Now we gotta address the elephant in the room. I explained this in a previous video, but we bought this collector because it was only like 150 bucks, and it was advertised to be, I think, 1 5/8 inch hole in the inner diameter. And we're using 1.5 inch, so I was like, okay, well, that difference we can make up with welding. However, It's not that, it's actually like closer to 2 inches for this hole, and this is 1.5 inch tubing. So as you can see, the gap is pretty large to fill there. My tubing expander did finally show up. However, it's the cheapest one in the world. I can get it overnight. It was legitimately like $33. So we'll see if it actually does anything. But I will say, this expander does fit inside the runner. So we're gonna do a test stretch on this piece here, see if it works. And if it does work, then we'll attempt to stretch these holes. If you have not used one of these before, the way they work is super simple. You tighten down this nut, so you're gonna spin this way, and as you tighten it down, it's going to force these anvils together and expand the diameter. So it's literally just gonna brute force stretch that metal out. It's pretty common for these made out of like pot metal that just cracks and breaks. I've broken many of these, including like high-end ones. However, since we're working with mild steel and not stainless steel, that should work in our favor because mild steel is a lot softer and stainless steel is more brittle and hard. So I'm really hoping this works. Switch to a longer piece that'll fit in the vise better. You know it's serious too when I'm using a ratchet and not a impact. I mean, it kind of worked. It also like immediately bent those. What if I like go in deep? Oh wow. It immediately crumbled the end of that. That anvil in the end just fell apart. I don't have a lot of faith in this. But we'll try it anyway, baby! We'll start here with the most obvious one on the outside. Oh my goodness. This is not gonna go well. We just gotta flare the tip a little bit. Oh, nope. This is not gonna work, guys. It's just falling apart. First, I'll put you in here. You have a new job now. There you go. You can be the doorstop. So if I center this in the circle here, in the hole, the gap isn't horrendous. Like, it's not great. It really isn't great, but I've also welded worse for things. A couple passes with a MIG will do just fine. I'm not gonna let this hold me up. Function over form, let's keep rolling. So now we're gonna weld these runners into the flanges and the collector, and then we'll be done. So how I'm going to accomplish this is, I think I'm going to do it because it's my first time ever. I'm gonna take it apart and then I'm gonna build it backwards. So I'm gonna start with the hardest to reach tube first, and then we're going to tack it to the base flange, which then later on I'll pull it off and weld it from the inside. And then also I'm gonna weld it along the collector here while I have access, and then move to the next one and the next one and the next one and so forth until it's fully assembled. Start with one. One down, 5 to go. But this weld looks pretty good. I think that'll pass. Certainly plenty solid. All right, she's pretty much all welded. There's a couple spots I can't quite get to back in here that need stitched, which I will do once I take it all off the engine, because I also need to clean up all the slag that happened here, and I also want to put it in the blasting cabinet and blast it all nice and fresh so that we can coat it with some kind of material. I'm not sure which, maybe like ceramic coating. We'll figure that out later. But while it's all still on the engine, there's something else I want to do. We ordered V-bands and 3-inch stainless steel tubing here for the exhaust. You may have noticed that this runner here is too close for a V-band. That was already a known thing on my end. I didn't mention it in the video yet, but you cannot get a clamp around this V-band there. But I'm not worried about that, because what I'm gonna do is I'm going to weld a stub of stainless here directly to the turbo, because the other reason is I don't like the V-band shape. I'm not sure what kind of V-band it is, but it doesn't match the ones we got, and I just don't trust it. So I'm just gonna extend it a little bit and then weld a V-band onto the end of the extension, and then we'll have the exhaust curl down this way to the center tunnel of the car. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut a stub off of here. I'm not sure which end here, we'll figure that out. We're gonna tack it to the turbo, we're gonna put a V-band on it on both sides, and then we're gonna cut and weld some more tubing to run down this way. I'm just doing everything I can right now to keep this car moving, because I really want to get this car running very soon, and without a functional exhaust, it's not gonna happen. I want the V-band to end up about here. I thought about having it go even further out to here, but the weight is to me too much, and I don't want to crack the mounting point here. So if we go about here-ish, it should be pretty good. But we're gonna cut at a slight angle, because you'll notice the turbo's cocked down that way. Got our little J-pipe here to curve it down. The best thing about a V-band is you can pop it in and then rotate whatever direction you need for fitment. So once we have the engine in the car, I can actually rotate this the way it needs to go. But wait, let's clamp it on and see how it looks. Well, the header's together, we have the exhaust started. I think it looks sick running along the top here. We'll have to put a bung in for an O2 sensor for the wideband. I'm not sure where that's gonna go, probably closer to this end, and just to make it more easily accessible in case of an issue up top. But now what needs to happen is I gotta take it all back off so I can finish welding the header, including the inside of the runners. I did end up doing a good bit of welding on the outside, as you can see. I figured why not? If I can reach it, might as well. It'll help with it not falling apart. Because then once it's all off, I'll finish weld it, and then I'll blast it in the blasting cabinet. We'll paint it with some kind of whatever coating that'll keep it from rusting and having issues down the road. But you'll also notice on this engine, there's still a bunch of stuff that needs to be done. We have accessories to install, like the alternator. We also needed a power steering pump. We have to also seal the actual components that are on here. Right now, they're just kind of mocked up. We got to pull them back off, seal it all up, put it back on. Maybe I'll paint the engine block while I'm at it. Probably not, but maybe I should. That'd be kind of cool. But the goal here is shortly to get this engine buttoned up and put back into the car permanently, to then, you know, get the wiring done and get the engine running. Which means also I'd like to paint the engine bay. It's gonna relate to the body color, which I'm gonna tell you guys soon. And then we have more things like the cage to work on and other accessories to get this thing actually safe and solid and ready to shred. So thanks for watching, guys, and as always, thank you for hanging in the shop with us.